All right, welcome to the 2 o'clock session. We have Erich, and he's going to be talking about ransomware, what it is, and what we can do about it with some of the tools he's going to talk about.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Has anyone here heard of ransomware? Pretty sure one. Okay, all right. So here's the deal. I got the post-lunch session, right? So this is about the time the turkey sandwiches or whatever should be kicking in. So we're going to start off with low calisthenics, all right? We're going to do some jumping jacks. We're going to get in the mood. Then we're going to get into the talk, right? All right, Colonel's with me on this. No, I'm just kidding. Going to have some fun here, I hope. Keep it a little bit lighthearted. It's kind of a dark topic, but we're going to, cover some of that. Good-looking guy on the screen, that's me. I'm humble. Been in IT and stuff since like the mid-1990s. Started off back in the FidoNet and bulletin board days. Some of you youngsters may not ever remember the sound of modems connecting and the pure joy when you get a courier-to-courier connection because all the compression. It's just fantastic, right? It was a whole nother world, folks. But that's kind of when I got into IT and started getting into the security side of things. I spent about 9.5 years down in Arizona supporting the U.S. Army and was the security manager at the 2nd Regional Cyber Center Western Hemisphere, which is a terrible name for an organization that's military because you have to answer the phone like that, and we had no acronym. Okay? So any of you guys ex-military in here? Okay, well, yeah, you don't count as ex or, okay. Also, CISSPs. Do we have any CISSPs in here? Okay. You may recognize me if you were around for the email that said, now you need 40 credits minimum per year. And okay, that was me. I was the Director of Member Relations and Services at ISC Squared for about 2 years. So, been around, been in security for a little bit. Somehow or another, I took a wrong turn in my career, and now I work in marketing. But the advantage is my phone doesn't ring at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I don't have a pager on my hip. So, it's not all bad. But I work for KnowBe4. We're out of Clearwater, Florida, which I will tell you is much warmer than this. I'm still trying to get used to that a little bit. But up here from there, we have about 14,000 customers in the, a lot of them in the small, medium business side, but we've actually worked up a little bit in the enterprise as well. Our competitors, just to give you an idea of what we do, KnowBe4 competes with PhishMe and Wombat. Those are our top two. So we do a security awareness training and simulated phishing platform. Our idea is try to train users not to click on stupid things and hopefully have better behaviors, right? Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about phishing here because still right now, the number one way that ransomware is getting spread is through phishing attacks. I can't tell you how many times, though, RDP, OpenRDP to the internet is being attacked these days also. So if you have OpenRDP sessions to the internet, stop. That's kind of the number two. We do see a lot of stuff come in through the web as well, through malvertising and other ads, things like that. But phishing is really where it's driving in from. Interestingly enough, little number there, 91% of successful data breaches start with a spear phishing attack. Right? We've heard a lot of red team stuff here and all that. If you talk to any of these teams, I'm sure they'll tell you, when all else fails, turn around and hit the user and you're going to get in. It happens far too often that way. Ransomware, $1 billion business last year. Then CEO fraud and W-2 scams also come in. We're going to start seeing W-2 scams here real soon. First quarter, all the tax stuff, people suckering people out of tax forms. If you're not already thinking about that, think about that in your organization. Tell your HR people to watch out for that, because that's going to be coming. So moving on, ransomware, it's kind of a big deal, right? $1 billion, like we said, 752% increase in ransomware families just last year. That's a huge number. And what's happened is these guys have this $1 billion, this lots of money coming in. And this isn't a bunch of guys in their mom's basement doing this. This is organized companies, organized organizations, nation states even, involved in some of this stuff. And so they've been able to innovate very, very well. And they're trying a lot of cool and different new things to try to get these infections. And quite frankly, it's working, right? Interestingly enough, last year, 153,000 users hit by mobile ransomware. And I expect that number to go up quite a bit as we move forward. I'll give an example of something a little bit later that was a type of ransomware-ish that hit mobile phones, but there's no reason we can't be doing our typical crypto ransomware through that as well. So, price-wise, ransomware price tags went up to about $1,077 last year, which is ironically about what a Bitcoin cost last year, which I'm still kicking myself over, right? I just cry every time I see what happened to those things. I know a guy, here's a side story, back in the day when they were first up, he mined a bunch of Bitcoins so he could buy a pizza and thought that was really cool. So 10 Bitcoins for a pizza? We'll just leave you on that one, right? That's a lot of money in these days. But I expect this to be higher this year because of that. The same study showed that small, medium businesses were a little bit closer to about $2,500 for the ransom. Typical attack, the thing you got to think about is, when it comes to these attacks, it's not just about paying the ransom, it's also about what it costs your organization and resources, all right? On average, 32 man-hours to deal with a ransomware attack. It went from 22 to 38 hours, depending. And that includes the person that can't work and your IT folks doing this and all of that kind of stuff. But that's a considerable amount of money when you start having things happen, right? And time from your already short-handed staff. And then finally, I don't really agree with this number. I've heard this thrown around. In this study, they said about less than half the people got their data back. I see that number higher than that. However, we have seen instances now where folks will put out a ransomware strain that really they can't even decrypt the data. It's just kind of riding on the good reputation of those that actually do get the data back. These are the scum of the scum that just throw it out there. There's really no way they can get the data back. We've seen that happen. Most of the time, if you pay the ransom, you will get the ransom, you will get your data back. The problem is sometimes law enforcement will have taken out the command and control infrastructure. Things like that happen in the meantime while you're messing around trying to get Bitcoins to pay this thing. So, most of the time, yeah, it works. The question is also, do you really trust that data? And there's some questions to that as well. They've had control of your data. If you look at the way HHS looks at it, they say if you have suffered a ransomware attack and PHI has been hit, then you're breached by default because somebody is taking control of that data, they've rewritten that data and encrypting it, and now they've put it back. Well, there's no reason people can't mess with the data there too. Not only that, these crypto ransomware strains are designed to encrypt the data as quickly as possible. They're not actually trying to keep it clean. So things happen during the encryption process where files could be corrupt. And you got to ask yourself, how much do I really trust the data when it comes back? We found through our studies about 55% of people in our campaigns will click on the phishing email link within 1 hour of receiving it. So that's very, very quick. And I'd like to say, if we could get 55% of our people to actually click on the emails that matter in the first hour they get it, right, we'd all change the world here, okay? But the bad guys, they know how to get people to understand and react to things. I've already heard people touch on it a little bit today about, those emotional tugs and pulls to get people to do things. There's a couple of emotions that drive actions in people, and that's outrage and anger. Those almost always drive an action out of a person. If you think about it, fear, sometimes people back off of something, but if you outrage them, if you make them angry, they're going to click on whatever it is you put in front of them, they're going to do something. That's an actual action. They know this, they drive into that, and unfortunately people still fall for it. Now, with respect to ransomware, I love this part. This is kind of us, right? A couple years ago, we were cruising along. We knew the threats. We knew what was going on out there. We knew how to handle things, right? And then ransomware showed up. I just love that picture. That's kind of how things felt, right? It all kind of came off the rails when ransomware really got going here. It's changed the way we've had to look at things and deal with things, fundamentally. I mean, I can tell you for years, my biggest concerns were firewalls and email, just that kind of stuff like that. But when it comes to the way that ransomware really hits things, oh, I love that he's going to take a picture, tweet this. My boss is going to see that. If y'all need a speaker, just let me know. I'm just kidding. But, this really, really affected the way we were. And now this is kind of the way that we're having to deal with this sort of thing, right? The world is on fire around us. And we're still trying to figure out how to deal with this because it's not slowing down. It's getting worse. Talk about some recent attacks. This happened a couple days ago. Employee malicious email attack. Yeah. Encrypted the county's files, but it also loaded a crypto mining software, right? As now Bitcoin is worth, trillions of dollars. I think it peaked at like 15,000 or something yesterday. I mean, it's just redonkulous. 19. Oh, 19. Okay, 19. All right. Yeah, I'm not even keeping track of this anymore. It just kills me when I could have bought it $35. But anyways, watching this stuff happen, what's going on here, they're starting to do this. And what's important to realize about this, I mean, this is a real world attack. Not only can the dropper go out and pull down the ransomware, it can pull down other things as well. In this case, it was a crypto mining software. But there's no reason other malware can't be pulled down at the same time. And we're starting to see more of these sort of attacks, these pseudo-hybrid or pseudo-ransomware attacks, where essentially it's kind of like they light a fire in the trash can over here and everybody's over there and this big in-your-face, because ransomware is in your face, right? So they've lit this fire over here in the trash can, and while everyone's responding to that, we've seen some very targeted phishing attacks over on the other side against the leadership while everyone else is busy trying to deal with this fire. So we're seeing more and more of that. We expect to see more and more of this sort of thing as well. It's why we recommend, if you get infected, don't trust that machine. Don't just restore the data, which we find that a lot of small, medium businesses do that. You want to nuke the machine from orbit. It's the only way to be sure, right? Nuke it, wipe it, start over from scratch. Be careful with the data that you put back on it. I love this, and this just kind of tells you how much people don't understand what's going on anymore. This was a LockCrypt, $23,000 ransom, hit 48 of 500 servers. I love this quote. I don't think we were targeted. I don't think we were at fault. There have been many, many institutions that have been breached. I think we do everything we can to keep our firewall secure. Okay. So this is the leadership talking about our firewall is secure and, it's not our fault. So many organizations don't understand, or at least their leadership doesn't understand what's going on and what they're up against. And as long as that keeps happening, we're going to keep having problems like this. Another one here, Fertility Clinic in Minneapolis. That was in October. Their servers had been impacted in a ransomware attack. Okay. So this right here, although there was no evidence it was actually accessed or viewed, blah, 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 this to me sounds like something going back to that HHS sort of thing. They had to say that this was a breach and report it as a breach, even though it was likely just crypto ransomware, because the HHS says if PHI is encrypted, it's a breach. And if you're in a medical situation, you don't want to have to go out and do breaches and breach notifications and have to deal with all that kind of stuff. But if there's 500 records that were touched by ransomware and you can't prove that it was encrypted beforehand, you're now in breach. So keep that in mind. That's something you got to watch out for when it comes to that. I'm a big proponent of obviously encrypting data at rest, especially PHI and stuff, but unfortunately a lot of organizations still don't do that. Should I pose for you? All right, got the thumbs up there. This is another good one here. Cockrahoe Police Department in Texas, Osiris, got hit by that strain. Yeah, so 8 years of police department evidence, gone. Fortunately, it didn't affect a whole lot of current things that were going on, and they said, well, we have all the paper copies, which to me translates into some intern is going to be living in hell for the next couple of years as they rescan those and redigitize all that stuff. That's how this kind of works. But this could be really bad, And of course, it was a phishing email. Our automatic backup started after the infection, so it just backed up infected files. Now, most of the time, that sounds more like a replication to me or somebody's doing a real poor job. However, we've seen some strains now that are trying to get in there, they're trying to be persistent, and they will lay low for a while to try to get into your backups. That way, when you do your restoration, if you restore that machine, it kicks off right away. It hits that command and control server, kicks off right away, you're back in that boat before you know it, and all of your backups are infected. So, something to think about, something to be careful with. And finally, Licking County, Ohio. Ransomware took online access and landline phones down. 1,000 government computers shut down. 911 center computers were down, and they had to log contacts manually. How reassuring is that when you're calling in and they're like writing down your 911 call. I'm sorry, sir, were you dying or almost dying? Hold on, sir. Oh, my pencil broke. Hold on. I mean, this is just a bad idea. Think about this when you're thinking about like incident response plans and continuity of operations and how bad it can really be. And I love what the county auditor here said. Apparently our clock still works. That was like the highlight of the whole thing, is their clock still worked, right? And so this is my own original joke, folks. I'm going to leave you with this. This was in Licking County, so the clock took a licking and kept on ticking, right? I'll be here all afternoon. Yeah, I got some. Thank you. All right. So this is one I mentioned a little bit earlier. This is Leaker Locker. So Leaker Locker, I don't know, some people call everything ransomware these days, right? Anything that involves something that happens that they call for money back, people are calling ransomware these days. This was actually more of a doxing sort of thing, but what's important about this is individuals downloaded this from the Google Play Store. It's from a legitimate store. And then when it went to install and it said, hey, we want access to all of these things that the people are having to scam up through, and then they hit OK at the end of it, because they don't know any better, right? So what this did is then it would take care of some things and it would pop up a lock screen. It said you have 72 hours to pay us $50, or we take all of these documents, and it listed out all of the things it could get to, and we send them to everybody on your contact list. So that could be embarrassing for people. It could be a real problem for people who use their phones for corporate business too. How many times have you downloaded a document on your phone to read it or something like that? You could have some serious issues with this if it starts blasting out all of this information to all the people on your phone. Now, there's no reason this couldn't be a typical crypto ransomware attack, because it used the user's ignorance of just saying, sure, I'll give it access to all these things, to hit. So I expect we're going to see more sorts of things like this. I expect to see more mobile devices being targeted as we move forward. There's a lot of things that tie back into networks, that poke holes back into our networks that people are walking around on the street with. And not only that, back in my day when I started, I mean, it was BYOD was your little cell phone that could do a few things here and there, your BlackBerry. Now people are bringing in tablets and their own personal stuff at rates we've never seen before. It's kind of scary. I can't wait to see everybody in the office with a little, Echo Dot over there going, Alexa, add this to my calendar. I mean, who knows what we're going to be trying to connect to these networks as we move forward. I'm sorry, youngsters, but you millennials love your tech and you want to bring it to work with you. I get it. It's tools you're used to doing. But we have to consider how that impacts the organizations, because these things are being spread. Now, talking a little bit about some things, ransomware as a service is something that has me very concerned these days. And ransomware as a service, if you haven't heard of it, is this fantastic new thing that the bad guys are doing. And basically it boils down to they didn't want to get left out of the game, right? I told you they were innovating. So they said, well, there's infrastructure as a service and software as a service and platform as a service. Let's make ransomware as a service. So what they're doing now is they're actually building out the command and control infrastructure, even down to the point of processing the payments and laundering the Bitcoin payments and all that kind of good stuff. They're building that out and then renting it to people. So what's happening now is non-technical people that just have no morals are able to get into the ransomware game. All right, you used to have to be pretty technical to do this. Anymore, all you really need is a list of email addresses or the ability to social engineer people well, which, let's face it, there's a lot of very good non-technical scammers and con men out there. Now all they have to do is be able to send the emails to people, and all of the technical stuff is taken care of. This top one here, that's called Philadelphia. Philadelphia is there's actually a YouTube video that has Philadelphia. It's a marketing video for this strain. And it's amazing, all of the things that you can do on this. It's very customizable. Everything up there from the Russian roulette to all of the text in the middle to everything else. It's amazing. This costs $400. That's it. All right. And they handle all of the infrastructure stuff. You're in the game for $400. The bottom one here, this is called Dot. Dot is the same sort of way. You walk through a wizard, you build out this ransomware, and what's cool about this is it's absolutely free. It's got a 50-50 profit sharing with the bad guys. All right? So they actually provide you with guidance and tips and tricks and how much to charge in different regions and what types of phishing emails work well in these regions, because they want you to be successful. because they're taking half the money. This is why I think ransomware is going to get worse in 2018 before it gets better. There's other strains out there, Satan, some other ones that, I can't say that strain, that's Satan. But these things are out there and they're happening over and over again. And again, these guys are getting very creative on how they're doing things. Any of you all have heard of Popcorn Time, the ransomware? Right? So Popcorn Time, you get infected and it gives you a link, and if you send that link to other people and 2 other people get infected and pay, you get your data back free. It's like the Ponzi scheme of ransomware, okay? Pretty impressive ways of thinking about this stuff. But it's going on and it's happening out there because, quite frankly, they're making a ton of money off this stuff. So I love this picture. I've been using this for a while and never gets old for me. If you haven't seen it before, I recommend you take a look at it. You may not be able to read it all, but this really covers so much of what's going on in the ransomware world and still so valid today, even though it's about 1.5 years old. This actually was done before the Dyn DNS thing. You may have remembered there was this little thing that shut down like 1/3 of the internet, and like Twitter went down, and that really hurt me. I was having to write things on Post-it notes and stick it on the window of my office. Like I need to share things with people. But the ironic part is, you got these right here. Excuse us while we participate in a DDoS attack. It's the camera and the bulb. I'm like, hey, what happened, right? This guy's a prophet, all right? But it's fantastic when you look at this and you think about some of these things. My favorite one, honestly, is this one down here. Send me $25 or I'll tell everyone on your social network you were stupid enough to buy an internet-connected broom, right? We're connecting everything in the world to the internet in our homes these days. I still haven't figured out why you need an internet-connected refrigerator. Now, I'm the biggest nerd in the world, right? You got an idea why? Okay. Oh, yeah, connecting beds to the internet, yes. Yeah, actually, so I'm sort of into the home automation thing. I've been screwing around with that, and there's actually proximity sensors you can tie in with that, so you can tell if somebody's in bed and you can turn off the light. There's all kinds of nerdy stuff you can do, right? Yeah, it could be for sleep number and all that. It's pretty crazy, though, the sorts of things that we're connecting to the internet. And by the way, I'm super thrilled with these. These are really cool little things for home automation. I'd love to talk that stuff if anyone wants to. But as we keep attaching these things to our networks, every time we do that, that's another attack vector. All right. Now, I have a bunch of they're Dahua or something. I don't know if I say it right. Cameras in my house, and they're known to call back to China, right? Okay. So I took the steps and I segregated them on their own network. They can't get out to the internet. But your average consumer is not going to do this sort of thing. And that's a little bit scary. We need to start thinking about that. Even when it comes to businesses, I'll tell you what, those cameras I have are really good quality cameras. They have a great picture. They do good stuff. They're inexpensive. How many organizations are plugging those into their businesses because they're inexpensive and work well, right? Well, there's your trade-off. You don't know what they're doing. We keep seeing these things that end up calling home and doing bad things, right? So we got to be careful with that. We're also seeing areas where, we had a hotel last year that was hit with ransomware, and it basically locked down all of the door systems for the cards. So people couldn't get into their hotel rooms because that whole system was locked down. And we've seen apartment complexes where they've shut down the heating and cooling system and then wanted to ransom for that. So this stuff is just going to get crazy. Anything you can plug in or get to and has value especially could be a target. Now, what can you do? Well, first thing, number one, it does work. Train your users. If you want to tell me that users are stupid and can't learn, we'll have a little off to the side chat about that. I absolutely disagree with that. I see it all the time. It's a matter of how we as professionals train the users and our ability to relate to them, all right? I'm a technical guy. I'm a nerd. You do not want me training your users, okay? Because the stuff that I think is cool is not going to be cool to them. That's the problem a lot of times when people say that. People aren't stupid. They're educated in domains that we may not be, and we need to understand that. But it's the number one way to get people to quit letting these bad things in your network. Number two is what we call weapons-grade backups. Now, when it comes to backups, entirely too often, we get lazy. We see that email that came in and the subject line is backup successful, and then we walk away. Oh yeah, it's good, right? I cannot tell you how many times I've heard stories of people that got that email but didn't realize that half of the stuff that they thought was getting backed up isn't, or that there's a problem with it somewhere. Maybe something changed in the folder structure, and now this other stuff isn't being backed up, but what your software thought it was backing up, it was great. Don't trust that. And when we talk about weapons-grade backups, what we mean also is keep your backups off your regular network. Story again last week, same sort of thing. People got hit, their network got hit. Their backups were network accessible. They were also hit with ransomware. Does you no good if you can't get back and decrypt your backups, right? Test it. Test the ability to restore. I say at least twice a year, restore everything you've got. It can be on non-enterprise disk. It can be on something like that. There's advantages to doing it on the real world. Like you know exactly how long it takes. That's actually kind of important. But if you can't, make sure you can get the data back. And at least once a month, pick some of your critical data, randomize it, pick some critical data, and make sure you can get that back. Things go wrong with backups. It's a fact. Has anyone in here tried to restore a bunch of data and had a backup fail? Only you. You were lucky. I honestly, that is one of the worst feelings in the world. It's a sinking feeling. It's an icy feeling in your gut. And quite frankly, when you go to talk to leadership, it's a lot easier to say some bad hacker got into our system and stole all of our stuff than it is to go, well, I kind of missed the email that said it was failing and didn't check it and all of our data's gone, boss, right? That's the quickest way to generate a cardboard box and a way out the door. Usually after you've cleaned up the mess, mind you, they're not going to fire you before you fix all this stuff, but it's not an easy thing to get past. Unfortunately, we rely too much on the automated stuff. So make sure that you're actually testing those things. Make sure that they're secure. There's the 3-2-1 method, 3 copies of the data, 2 of them off-site, or 2 different types of media, 1 of them off-site. Follow that. Whether it's tape being the other kind of media or somewhere in the cloud. And don't rely on Dropbox. Don't rely on Google. We've actually seen strains where if you have the connector installed on the machine, they will target those sorts of things so you don't have a way to get back at it. They know their bread and butter is you not having a way to restore your files. So they're targeting those things. The volume shadow copies, all of that stuff, different strains do different things. But they know to go after those things. So it's really important you do that. Segmenting the network. You know, some of you may realize a lot of this stuff is Security 101. But what's happened is we've become so reliant on technology to do all the work, especially the junior folks, they haven't necessarily been told the importance of a good foundation, right? So segmenting the network. And what that means is, if your marketing computer or your receptionist computer doesn't need to get to, say, a login screen on a production SQL server, don't let it. But it's amazing how often we see flat networks in this world. And that's bad news not only for ransomware, but hackers as well. So a hacker gets in there, somebody gets in there, they get into a machine. Are they going to be happy on that one person's machine? No, they're not going to be happy. They're going to try to pivot and move around, right? Yeah, unless there's something great on the receptionist machine, they're not going to hang out there, right? They're moving somewhere else. Limit where they can get. And that's going to reduce the amount of damage that can happen. And it kind of makes sense, but a lot of folks don't think about that. You know, we all know about WannaCry. WannaCry, it's that little thing that hit this year. That was actually, I was doing actually this talk at Converge in Detroit, 3 o'clock on the day that hit. That was a pretty interesting one because everyone was like, hey, what's going on? You know, everyone wanted to know. I'm like, hey, whose phones are on fire because they're on our IR team? And most of the place raised their hands. But when that hit, it spread so fast and so far, it was phenomenal. Had organizations done a better job of segmenting things into smaller areas and blocking what had to go to other things or had the ability, that would have been so much more contained and so much less disastrous. Unfortunately, fortunately, the attack kind of opened the door for us for executives. When they're seeing this stuff in the magazines they read, we can go, look, this is a big problem. That opened the door for us. But It could have been so much less disastrous had those networks been segmented and they limited the ports and protocols and data that could go across those areas. Then principle of least privilege, kind of the same, only on the network ACL levels, right? A lot of organizations, you have an S drive or something, a shared drive that has accounting and marketing and every other department in that place, and people have access to just everything in there, right? Well, ransomware typically starts off by, launching in the context of the user that launched it. Some of it will try to gain permissions, but not all of it. It'll just, whatever it can do in the context of that user. If your receptionist doesn't need access to the accounting share, or your marketing team doesn't need access to an IT share, don't let them have it. Because if it doesn't have the rights to modify that file, it can't encrypt it. So this is another great way to kind of limit the damage that can happen in an organization, is by understanding who has permissions to what. I also want to say, think about service accounts in your organization. What service accounts are running, how long it's been since passwords were changed. Typically, those have a whole lot of permissions, and the password gets changed once next time the company gets billed, right? Yeah. Those are pretty nasty. You got to have a way to either switch those up a little bit, get them contained, maybe in different segments or whatever, or limit the amount of permissions they have. It's super easy to go into somewhere and go, hey, this service account needs all these kind of permissions to do its job. Gosh, I tried it twice, it failed, now I just made it an admin, or worse yet, a domain admin, because all service accounts need domain admin. But it works like that, so I'm going to go now tackle this other problem. Such a bad idea, all right? But we see it over and over again. It's unfortunate. Got to think about that. And then monitoring the network, of course, some sort of a SIM, some sort of a way to see what's going on. There's a lot of free open source stuff out there that you can deploy, IPS, IDS, something that's going to report on weird crap happening, especially feeding your endpoint protection into something like this. If things start hitting off in different areas, you have a problem, you can go do it. But if you're waiting for the report to get emailed to you from Symantec's console the next day and it goes, hey, all hell broke loose over here, that's probably not the email you're waiting for, right? You want to know what's going on there. And there's just so many products out there that can get you started to help get visibility into that sort of thing. And then keeping up with patches. There's going to be a collective groan around here. Patching stinks, okay? And a lot of people pontificate on patching. They'll stand up here and go, you have to patch no matter what. I'm more of a realist because I've been doing this a long time. And I know sometimes patching is it's a break-o-matic, right? You apply the patches, the world catches on fire, you roll back the patches, you got to fix everything, all right? I've been in very, very large enterprise environments, and we had to take special care of our patches because they could break a whole lot of things, like the Army, because we ran the Active Directory for all of North America for the Army, right? Things can go wrong when that happens. Well, the key is making a good process around it and taking it seriously. You have to take patching seriously. If you don't patch or can't patch, and there are a lot of cases where you can't. I've done time in the medical industry. You got this beautiful MRI machine that does wonderful images. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. It runs on Windows XP. The company's been bought or sold 17 times since you put it in, but to replace it is $3 million and there's no reason to. This happens out there, okay? So if you can't patch a machine, though, do your due diligence and look at other controls you could put in place. In other words, can I block this vulnerability? Can I isolate this machine? Can I only allow it to talk to one or two machines on the outside that it can relay to? Something like that. Don't just go, I can't patch it, and walk away. A lot of organizations, they get to the point that they're like, oh, that XP machine, we can't patch it anymore. They don't even consider it when it comes time for vulnerability, considerations and risk analysis. And that gets people in trouble when it all really goes down. So that's kind of my spiel on that. I know it's not easy, but it's something we have to take seriously, and we have to build into a very deep company culture too, because in organizations that have security and, say, an IT staff, I've struggled with that before, where I'm going to the ops guys and I'm like, man, we need to patch this. And they're going, yeah, but we need the SQL servers to work. and you butt heads like that. By making a good process that says, you know what, anything that's a CVSS score above 6 or 7 or whatever, we're going to have patched within 72 hours. Having that process gets everyone on the same boat, at least, if you can all agree to that and you know what you're doing. Maybe the other ones are going to be a little longer, because quite frankly, most people are not getting owned by 0 days. Unless you're a big company or a nation state, they're not going to get to you as 0 days, okay? It's usually things that have had a patch out for 30 days or 60 days or something like that. There have been time to patch these sort of things. So, I'll get off my soapbox now. So protecting your users, right? I thought this was great. The Verizon DBIR this year said, train your employees with regard to phishing, provide them a quick and easy way to report suspicious emails. All right. We have a tool that you can download. It's free. You don't have to be a customer. Works on Office 365, Outlook, and Gmail. And what it does is it's an MSI, you deploy it, goes in there, reports to NSA. No, I'm kidding. Kidding! Just seeing who's still awake. But what it does is it allows the users to click the button, and if they suspect it's an email, they hit the button, it wraps it up headers and all, so you don't have to go back to them and try to explain the difference between forwarding and dragging and dropping, right, all that kind of stuff. It wraps it up, it sends it to you, or your SOC, or whatever, with all of that information. What's cool about this is, if you deploy this and you get 4 or 5 people that have now hit you up with these sorts of things, and you're getting several of these phish alert button alerts, quickly, you know that you're under attack. So you can warn the users. We do it all the time. Send it out, hey, we're seeing a lot of this one that looks like an Amazon gift card or whatever. Keep an eye on it. Or you can go a step further. You can go wipe it off the mail server, so most of your individuals never even see the thing, right? Or you can take it and have a little fun with it, defang it, pull the bad stuff out, put in some simulated phishing links and send it back out to your people, and get them used to seeing what's real out there and what the attacks really are. So there's a lot that you can do by doing this. You can do it by having people also send a phishing at or whatever it is in your organization. The problem is people often forget what those email addresses is. That's why having some sort of a button like this makes it a lot easier. They'll forget what the email address is or who to send it to. And then, obviously they just give up. The other thing is nice about this is by taking it out of their inbox, they don't come back later at lunch and go, I wonder if that really is an Amazon thing, and then end up clicking on it, right? Get it out of their mind. What people don't understand when it comes to training, again, people aren't stupid, but what we're not trying to do here is we're not trying to make them technical geniuses. You don't want to get them into header manipulation or checking or analysis or any of that kind of stuff, right? What you really want people to do is to get that email that feels a little weird and work on that. Something's a little off on this reflex, right? How many times have you seen a user do something that we deem stupid, and you go to them and go, why did you do that? Well, I thought something was a little weird about that, but I went ahead and clicked on it anyways, or I did it right. That happens too often because they don't have another something to do about it, or they haven't tuned that instinct. So that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to just tune that instinct a little bit, get them to report it, and then have somebody that's actually technical take a look at these things. So let's see, moving on. Other threat vectors. Yeah, so as we all walk around here with these lovely little Wi-Fi enabled things transmitting God knows what around our necks, I'm going to talk about other threat vectors and what to watch out for, right? I do love these, by the way, but who knows what's on these, okay? Fact is, I have 2 rules. It's this one and the next one. Don't plug random junk into your devices. All right, it makes sense. All right. You won't believe how effective USB drops are. Still, today. A couple years ago, this was from Black Hat or one of those, they did a talk. 300 thumb drives dropped at the University of Illinois. We can blame Illinois for that. 98% were picked up, and 45% of those picked up the drives and clicked on the files. So they asked him, why did you do that? Well, I don't know, I want to see what it was. What bad hygiene is that? So teach people to do that. I don't know how you guys watch Mr. Robot, right? Okay, so early on in the seasons, there was the USB drop thing, and okay, fine, the guy caught it or whatever. But these are actually real attacks. People will leave stuff out like that and see what they plug in. It's unfortunate, but folks don't think about that. Or they take it home and they plug it into their home machine. which doesn't seem like anything to us, right? But what if that home machine is VPN'd into our network? Or VPNs into our network, right? These attacks don't just affect things at home. So you got to be careful with what you're doing. People need to understand. Okay, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. We can talk afterwards. Please don't catch on fire on your way out.